Vermont is the best state for East Coast skiing, but it has so many mountains that it may be difficult to find the right one for you. If you're having trouble deciding on where to go for your weekend getaway, or curious on which pass you should get, this video gives you an insight on my favorite mountains. My number 10 spot is Mad River Glen. Mad River Glen is one of the very few classic vintage mountains left that have not been bought out by Epic or Icon. For some reason, snowboarders are not allowed at the Glen. Sorry. While the mountain could use better grooming, it has relatively small crowds and a wide range of difficulty. Its prices are fair, but a bit expensive in my opinion, considering the size of the mountain. One of Glen's main issues with only 148 skiable acres and 4 lifts is its size. It just cannot compete with the other mountains on this list. Other than that, it is a fun weekend getaway with its iconic one-person chair and its history. My number 9 spot goes to Pico. Pico may be the most overshadowed mountain in the East Coast. It is on the same mountain as a huge Killington resort, which people much rather go to, causing Pico to usually be empty. Pico shares the same problems as Mad River Glen, only having about 200 acres of skiable terrain. I think that Pico is still better than Glen because of its great groomers, parking, and very cheap lift tickets, making skiing there a breeze. If you are a more advanced skier, I still recommend that you go to Pico's big brother, Killington. My number 8 spot goes to Smuggler's Notch, which again has an old vintage feel and difficult terrain. A day pass here will only cost you $85, cheap for its size. With Stowe only being a mile away, Smugglers can often be forgotten, but it is still a very solid mountain by itself, receiving over 322 inches of snow and having a vertical of 2,525 feet, which is quite good for the East Coast. Other than the mountain's reputation of being cold and windy and having decently long lines, it doesn't have many weak points, and is great for intermediate skiers, earning it the number 8 spot. Number 7 is Mount Snow. Mount Snow is a great resort for beginners and intermediate skiers, with a little bit of expert terrain on the north face. Mount Snow also has some of the best parks in the US, great for freestyle skiers. Mount Snow can attract some huge crowds due to it being the most southern mountain on this list and the closest to New York City. Mount Snow doesn't get much snowfall, but makes up for it with its great snowmaking. Snow is a great mountain for beginners because of the lack of much challenging terrain and very expensive housing and food. I recommend going more north. My number 6 is Stratton. Stratton has a great mix of advanced and beginner terrain, and with 670 acres of trails, the second biggest in Vermont, its tall peak and many trails attract many people, causing it to sometimes be called the Vale of the East Coast. While it has many upsides, it comes at a cost. Literally, a day pass here is $188. The large crowds can create long lift lines, and because of its huge acreage and lift, 16, Stratton can have a hard time grooming most trails. Stratton is still an outstanding mountain that I do recommend. My number 5 is Sugarbush. Sugarbush is one of the best the East Coast has to offer. Sugarbush Resort is 2 mountains connected under one name, the original Sugarbush Mountain and Mount Ellen. It is a pain to get from one side to the other, so I recommend staying on one side for the day. Sugarbush is known for its expert terrain and glades, so I do not recommend this mountain for beginners. But if you are brave enough to ski it, Sugarbush is one of the most beautiful mountains in Vermont, with decent day prices. Other than ungroomed trails, Sugarbush is a very rounded mountain. My number 4 is Okemo. Many people put Okemo lower, but I believe that it is a great mountain. Its size and well-groomed terrain make Okemo a formidable resort. Okemo has a great spread of difficulty with almost an even split between black, blues, and greens. Okemo features 20 lifts and 121 trails, which is massive for the East Coast. Some downsides of Okemo are long lift lines on holidays, and expensive prices, including the lift ticket of $139. For the casual/family skier, Okemo may be your go-to mountain. My number 3 is Stowe. Stowe is a great all-around mountain. Stowe has great groomers, the second most snowfall on the East Coast, all kinds of terrain, challenging trails and glades, while also having a good amount of family skiing. If you want a resort that can do it all, Stowe is your go-to. Until you look at the prices. A day pass at Stowe is $215, which is outrageous for the East Coast. And also expect to spend upward of $30 for a meal. Not to mention that lines can sometimes get out of hand. Still, I think that the acreage, views, and trails can make up for it, giving it the number 3 spot. My number 2 spot goes to Jake Peak. Jake Peak is absolutely an underrated resort. Close to the Canada border, Jake Peak has the highest snowfall in all the East Coast, making beautiful conditions most of the time, even with Jay's mediocre grooming. Jay has the best glades in the East Coast and tons of challenging terrain, giving the best skiers a difficult time. Be warned that Jay Peak can get very cold, and often has wind delays. It is also far away from most metropolitan areas, roughly a 9-hour drive from NYC. My number 1 goes to the one and only Killington. Killington dwarfs all other ski resorts in the area. With 1,509 skiable acres, 22 lifts, and 151 trails, you will never get bored of Killington. It gets a decent amount of snow, but for its snowmaking, makes up for it. With great conditions and the longest ski season out of all Vermont mountains, lift tickets are expensive, about $160 for a day pass, but that can be expected for a mountain as great as Killington. People say that is the closest you can get to the Rockies in the East Coast. Be warned that crowds can get worse and worse every year. Whether you are an advanced skier, a beginner snowboarder, or anything in between, Killington has it all. Thank you for watching, hope this helped, and happy skiing!